is a presentation of the iRacing Esports Network.
The 2K World Cup presented by DES Simulation returns, and it is one of those weeks where the drivers and the teams didn't know exactly where they'd be going until literally an hour before the race. So hello and welcome to Oran Park and welcome to the 2K World Cup. Qualifying is already underway at this track, which is small. Let's be honest about that. It's only 1.62 miles in length. It's got itself 11 corners. And because of that, it is a short and fast qualifying. So let's take it straight to that one now. Got ourselves drivers on track, and as ever, they got 2 laps to go as fast as they possibly can. On board right now with Copa Lopez in the number 301 car in towards turn 1. And well, Jake, that turn number 1 is going to be the difference maker here this afternoon.
It's so difficult to overtake here, Will, and I have to say your charter jet from Brazil over to Australia is mightily, mightily impressive indeed. But you have to say that turn 1 is going to be the real only overtaking opportunity. You can be brave into the final corner if you get a good enough run, but this track is so built around momentum. It is so built around trying to get as quickly as you can from one corner to the next, almost flowing like a river. It is one of those tracks you have to be so careful of. Worth also pointing out the virtual Oran Park, as Oran Park is probably the only track on iRacing which does not exist anymore in the real world.
There's a few. There is the curse, of course, as on board with Greg Zeitz as he enters the final corner. Pit road will be an interesting one here as well. We'll talk about that one once the race starts. Expect the left-hand side of your screen to get very busy right about now. We've got times coming in, and Johnny Gindi, 1:14.342, gets himself provisional pole. Copa Lopez, second place. Felipe Burr, third. Andrew Picorio, fourth. Enzo Cantor, fifth. Jordi Lopez Jr., Justin Tipton, Simon Edwards, Scott Velt, and Greg Zeitz, they are your top 10. But, Jake, they still got 1 lap to go.
They still do, and there's some drivers who haven't gone and set lap times yet. Brian Lockwood hasn't set a lap time. Richard Avery hasn't set a lap time, nor has JB Massada in the 233, who's making his charge to the line right now, and he's been looking quick, 1:15.6. That's not quick, though. He's 1.3 seconds off of Gindi at at the moment. The Evolution Racing Team driver, someone who last season could not find a race finish in the middle of the season to save his cotton socks, but right now it seems his cotton socks are all based around going as quickly as possible. Those second lap times are so vital, Will, because that first lap is basically the warm-up. Now you go and attack. Jordi Lopez Jr. will be the first driver to cross the line. He needs 0.6 of a second, and at the moment he doesn't have it. He crosses the line, and he goes slightly quicker to third for now.
Yeah, it all changes. Copa Lopez gets himself provisional pole. Guindy second, Tipton third, Lopez Jr. fourth, Felipe Barber, Andrew Picorio, Greg Zeitz, Enzo Cantor, Brian Dewell, Tran Turan. They are your top 10. It's one of those things, it's almost like a stock market. They all move up and down into their new positions in almost perfect synchronization. Richard Avery does not have time to set a lap. Carl Dronke does not have time to set a lap. There is one person that we want to consider, and that is the driver of Brian Lockwood. But it doesn't look as though that he will get a lap completed, another lap completed even. His first lap only good enough for P number 18. So it was a fast qualifying, Jake, but now we got to start thinking about the race.
We certainly do, Will, and you look at this race and you see someone like Lockwood miles down the order as Andrea Iman actually moves up ahead into 18th position. You got drivers at the front who are expected to be at the front, the drivers further down, and this is really telling actually in terms of driving style. Who is there who is incredibly quick because of their natural pace, or who's quick because they practice a lot and they try and find and fine-tune their vehicles as much as possible?
Yeah, let's then have a look at your starting grid for this episode of 2K World Cup, presented by DES Simulation. Ade Copa Lopez, front row of the grid, 114.294. Johnny Guindy alongside him, Justin Tipton and Turan, row number 2. Tran always does well on these random races, just worth thinking about that one. Jordi Lopez Jr. in 5th, Felipe Barber in 6th, Andrew Picorio, Greg Zeitz, Enzo Cantor and Brian Dewell, they round out your top 10. Rest of the results are going to cycle through on your screen now. 30 laps is the distance here today, Jake. It's a wide pit window here, but as we talked about, it's very hard to actually get onto pit road.
It's one of the slowest pit roads on iRacing. It is one of the most treacherous pit roads on iRacing. It is a nightmare. It is single track to get in. Not only that, the pit entry is right on the racing line as well, so you have to be so careful to get yourself onto and off of that pit road. You have to be so brave to make that call early, because if someone doesn't catch you, Will, then you may be off and out for good.
Oh yes, and there's a look then at this track. Note the fact there is a little figure of 8 there. It's not as spectacular as Suzuka's figure of 8. You basically just turn right a few times, and before you know it, you're back where you started, just on top of yourself. But the second section of this track's all about momentum. The start, finish straight. Make sure you get turn number 1 right. If there's going to be a safety car, you might not see it on lap number 1 here. You're more likely to see it on lap number 2, as the drivers are lining up now on the starting grid, and they are almost ready to go racing, as we say, for 30 laps here today in the 2K World Cup. Well, don't forget, tomorrow night you got yourself Monday Night Skippies in support of the Calm Zone. That'll be same time, 9 p.m. UK time. Lights go on top of the pace car. We are set then for 30 laps of racing. Lights go on, lights go out. We are away at Oran Park, as the drivers will now just have to try and get themselves nicely down into that first corner. Can they all do it without too much difficulty? The answer to that question we're going to find out right about now. You got to slide it in towards this first corner before you really slow it down for turn number 2. Your top 20 drivers have all done so without incident, Jake, and now let's turn right for about 20 seconds.
Yes, exactly, except you have to switch back left. It's a lot tighter, this section. There's sounding like there's a bit of contact potentially in the rear, and you can see how it's checking up towards the back of the field, and the last two vehicles, Javi Rose and Enzo Cantor, get themselves going as well. But Ade Koba unchallenged then in the early stages. Gindi second, Tipton third, Tran in fourth, Jordi Lopez Jr. in fifth. Your top 6, 7, 8 have all remained exactly the same as we expected, but of course they haven't got to the prime overtaking opportunity, and Gindi's just getting a little bit squirrely. Actually, I was looking there through turn number 8. Will is actually running wide behind was Justin Tipton. This is allowing Tuan Tran the opportunity to go out there and attack, and all of those TT Racing cars are starting to drop back from your leading two, who want to break away as quickly as possible.
Yeah, this is a track that you can break away at a little bit as well. Live timing and scoring is available. Visit racebot.tv/timing. But there is a look on board with the driver of Johnny Gindi in towards turn number 2 again. Behind Jordi Lopez Jr. overtaking Tran. That is going to be for 4th place on track. So Lopez Jr. charging up through the field early. Tran down into P number 5. Felipe Burr, Andrew Pecoria, Greg Seat, Adrian Jimenez. He's had a good start. Brian Dewell and Simon Edwards, top 10, top 11. Drivers out early on there, Enzo Cantor and Xavi Ross. Down at the rear of your field, you have got battles going on. JB Masida and Steve Fiatchi, they are just going side by side. That's what 18th place on track. But it's worth noting, 2nd to 3rd place right now. The gap, Jake, is 7, actually now up to 9 tenths of a second.
And those 9 tenths of a second will not be recouped back on that front stretch. Draft isn't as important here as maybe some other circuits, but if you lose the draft in this Skip Barber, you are pretty much sitting and duck, and that's what nobody wants in this field, and they want to be pushing as much as they can. This is why we're starting to see maybe mini packs form here, as Gindi just very happy to stay content, sit behind Ade Koba at the front of the field. Mainly, it's the fuel saving game, Will, that people look at. Yes, it's a wide pit window here, as both of them getting very squirrely on the brakes through 1 and into 2, as now Jordi Lopez Jr. behind in 4th position is under all sorts of pressure from Tran, who's weaving all over like a hornet trying to sting its prey. But ultimately, Will, you see that pit stop window may be wide, but fuel saving allows you those extra couple of laps and an extra couple of seconds less on the lane.
Yep, Tran versus Jordi Lopez Jr. still staying where they are as they go up the bridge, swing it to the right, and officially, I'd say at that point, you're into the 2nd sector of this race. And now, here we are as they flick it to the left again. As out front, the gap is now up to 1.1 second between Gindi and Tipton. So they are slowly starting to put away. I want to keep an eye out though on some drivers at the rear end of your top 10 or just outside your top 10. Got a nice little scrap developing here. You've got Zeet, Jimenez, Duell and Edwards. And Jimenez did actually gain up 2 places from where he started on this event.
He did, and one of those positions, of course, was to Enzo Cantor, who started on pit road. So really, it was 3 positions that he has gained. But side by side, Tuan Tran coming back at Jordi Lopez Jr., but he's got to go the long way round, and that's not going to be helpful, especially when you've got Le Bear trying to dive down the inside and takes full advantage of Tuan Tran. Yes, he may be good at qualifying straight away, but that race pace certainly wasn't there as he lost it going into 1, and there's a position gone. But you can see how the train is forming now behind Jordi Lopez Jr. all the way back to Scott Velez, and the one person who needs to be on that train that isn't at the moment, Will, very crucially, is reigning champion number 1, Brian Lockwood.
Yeah, indeed so, as there is Tran. We've been having a look with him, been having a look at Labour, etc., but there is Brian Lockwood all the way down right now in P number 15. The gap between himself and the race leader is already up to 9.1 seconds, and he's got himself right now Will Fisher ahead. If he can get himself past Fisher, he will have a little bit of clean air. So on board with the driver of Lockwood as he'll work himself towards that final corner. Now he can get a good run out of this corner. He can try and go side by side into 1 and 2, but Lockwood can't do so that time. Just doesn't look he's got a car that's stable under acceleration, Jake.
Partially, yes, and I think that's why we've been seeing Brian Lockwood angling for moves maybe down into that final corner instead of trying to set the run up into, say, turn number 1. He doesn't have that ability to go out there and make a decisive move. He doesn't have the acceleration maybe to set up underneath him to make it work, and I think he's looking for something, just something that gives him that chance. Will Fisher, of course, went away for a couple of seasons over the start of 2018. He's come back looking for a chance then to just have a bit of fun again with the Skippy, I think, and he's doing a very good job. +3 for the day so far, Will, and I think that he is proving that he can be a very, very difficult customer to try and appease.
Yeah, towards the rear of the field as well, you have got a couple of people scrapping it out. Here's Hans Hoyer, that is with Ronan Griffin, and Hoyer in the Tag Hoyer car, because that's what you've got to do if that's your name. Ronan Griffin just ahead of him, 4 tenths per second in that number 39 machine. Don't forget, ladies and gentlemen, you can subscribe to the iRacing Esports Network if you want more action from around the world of iRacing sim racing. That includes, of course, all the iRacing World Championship Grand Prix Series, all the iRacing World Championship Series, as well as iRacing Special Event, League Racing, Official Racing, and so much more. So click that button and subscribe to the iRacing Esports Network now. On board, Johnny Gindi. He's got himself now. They pulled out, Jay, about a second and a bit over the course of 3 laps. Now, I think they're going to carry on doing that, and just work this one till after pit stops before they even start thinking about fighting for position.
And if they're going to battle it out on the last lap, then all has to hark back to Spa-Francorchamps as Ade Koba runs incredibly wide there through turn number 6. He gathers it back up without any real worries, but if it goes to the last lap, we know that Ade Koba's won a last lap scrap before. That was with Greg Seats, so Ade Koba surely with the advantage. Also worth pointing out, Will, Brian Lockwood's made his way past Will Fisher. That was down at turn number 2, as expected, the prime overtaking opportunity. And for Brian Lockwood now, it's how quick can I get to Scott Valles. The moment, it seems he can only gain a 1/10 of a second a lap, as Leibert now looks to get past Jordi Lopez Jr.
Yep, so here's a look at Philippe Leibert side by side in towards turn number 1. Looks as though that Leibert, and that's the whole thing about that corner. You might look as though you gain the advantage through turn number 1, but then can you slow the car down into turn 2? In that case, the driver Jordi Lopez Jr. couldn't. Consequently, Philippe Leibert's worked himself now up into 4th position, and he's got Justin Tipton, his teammate, 1.3 seconds ahead. The only question's going to be, can...
Oh! Sorry, that's Brian Duell actually getting a huge tap through turn number 4 there, Will. I just had an eye on it because it was a big scrap between Jimenez and Seats, and then there was just contact. It was Simon Edwards making contact. Kabanga went around as well, and ultimately they will lose positions in patience here at the circuit of Oran Park.
Yeah, and here's a look then. Christian Kabanga's the one that came off worst off. Simon Edwards in that shot as well. And that's where it all started. So Edwards running into the rear of someone, then Kabanga is the driver that suffers the most, having to take the kind of slip-ish road is what I'm going to call it there. We'll have one more look this time on board with Christian Kabanga as they come into the sequence. And there you can see their car being turned around. That's the number 88 machine of Brian Duell. And that is Christian Kabanga then being forced off track and all the way down now into 15th position. So we've got Jimenez versus Greg Seats. They're going at it right now. That is for 8th place on track. Oh. And Greg Seats is just ahead of Jimenez. But that one in itself will deserve a second look. On the exit of turn number 2, they come into the corner. And then it's all really about at what point do you think you can go in front of the car? I mean, I've seen some good parallel parking, Jake. I've seen some good overtaking, but that one was close.
I think a nuclear scientist wouldn't even have that ability to get any molecules any closer than those two got. Adrian Jimenez really struggled there. Had to check off of it so slightly with Greg Seats. And what Johnny Simone would say is that you'd angle instantly back out to the outside, go back on the offensive again. Johnny Simone likes to be an aggressive driver, as should have Adrian Jimenez, but he didn't have the ability to send it around the outside. And again, you can see angling to that inside line on Greg Seats, trying to worry the driver in front as much as possible. Try and force mistakes around this circuit. You don't have many opportunities to make moves, but you have many opportunities, Will, to make mistakes.
Yep, Chris and Kabanga right now behind Anthony Cap. This is coming in towards turn 1. Now, these two were side by side, and of course, this is Kabanga now on a recovery drive after that previous incident with Duell and Edwards. They were side by side on the exit of the final corner. Kabanga could not do anything about that in towards turn number 1. Dietz and Jimenez, they're still going at it. In fact, they changed positions again. Jimenez now back ahead. So these two have also brought Brian Duell into the party here. And Duell, of course, is the driver in the number 88 car that was semi-turned around a couple of laps ago.
And he's lucky there's no damage on that machine as well, that positive sim racing car, because he knows that he wants to be out there and attacking. Duell, not the greatest qualifier in the world, but certainly one of the best racers in the field. Always seems to be gaining positions no matter where he is. Almost like the 2K World Cup's Marty Piatella, as it were, as this race continues. And now, here on lap 9, looking to start lap 10, 1/3 distance. This signals the opening of the pit stop window, Will. And that's going to be very crucial as now Scott Valeth is under pressure for 11th position. Here's Brian Lockwood angling down to the inside on the long front stretch, looking at 1 and 2. He tried it last lap, couldn't find it, goes down to the inside this time, much more decisive.
Yeah, Scott Valeth and Brian Lockwood, they're going at it. Lockwood now up into 11th place. So this is one that's becoming interesting because Lockwood is 1.5 seconds behind this train right now. And having a look at the lap gaps, I mean, if he is able in clean air to start closing up, he could be there within about 3 to 4 laps, right as the pit stop window opens.
Well, he could be, Will, but that's only if Greg Seitz and Adrian Jimenez start battling the way that they have been over the last couple of laps. They have been slow. Well, it is expected, Will, but at the same time, they are slowing each other down, but now they've started to fall back into single file, and I think that Adrian Jimenez is now going to lead the pace comparatively to Greg Seitz, and that's going to mean that life is tougher for Brian Lockwood to chase that gap down.
Yeah, but you still got Greg Seitz and Brian Duell. In fact, the three are together once again, as they'll come down towards the start-finish line, and almost, I thought Duell was considering going on pit road there, but Jimenez and Dietz are again going to go side-by-side in towards turn number 1, as look at that, all the way out to the outside as the two almost make contact. Look for the over-under, down to the inside, in towards turn number 2. There is Greg Seitz, and Brian Duell is just staying out of this one completely. Next corner, that will, however, favour Jimenez, but Seitz is going to try and go round the outside. The two almost make contact again as they now flick it to the left through the little kink before they go to the right one more time. Turn number 5. Now it's a case of going up over the hill and, well, side by side for almost half a lap there has brought Brian Lockwood down to 1.2 seconds. In fact, nope, within a second. I don't know what I'm talking about.
Oh, and over the curb heavy went Adrian Jimenez, and I think he may or may not have got a slow down penalty, and I think he's got away with one there, Will, as he was very, very aggressive, and that's allowing Greg Seitz back into the fight, wanting to make positions up, and just seemingly cannot find anything that works in favour as you're leading to, once again, still line astern, but now traffic becoming an issue for them with Andreas Robertson, the elder statesman, trying to get involved in this. This is all fantastic for Brian Lockwood, but as we say that, he dives down onto pit road. He sees they're battling ahead of him, Will. He goes, you know what? I'm going to get an undercut. You're going to hold each other up. I'm just going to do it in the stops without any fuss at all.
Yeah, and that pit window, I was about to say, opens around lap number 11, 12. Now, Lockwood might have to take a bit more fuel here. He only takes 11.2 seconds. He might have to save a little bit because that is a little bit less than what I'd expect if you're coming in this early, although he did have to spend a lot of time behind drivers going slower than him earlier on in the motor race. So he might well have saved quite a bit there. So remember that, 11.2 seconds of Brian Lockwood. If he started towards the end, I told you so on lap number 12. Back towards some of your racing. You've got yourself moving away from that battle with Seitz Well, Jimenez, for a moment, you got yourself Andrew Picoria, who's kind of caught this train, which has now got yourself, oh, we've got ourselves a change for position, because here is Johnny Guindy to the front, Ade Copa Lopez down into the second place. Replay of that one coming up as Picoria and Brian Dewell will both come on towards pit road right about now, but Johnny Guindy will take over the race lead. What that normally means, Jake, is that Ade Copa Lopez will be on pit road next lap.
It normally means that Johnny Guindy's on pit road this lap, Will, as he often says, I want to come in, get to the front of the field so that I have a clean run onto pit road. That's why Guindy has made the move. He saved his fuel. I expect he wants to dive down onto pit road. Either that or he's just been bored of staring at the gearbox of Ade Copa and he wants to get past the Vodafone Giants gaming car and has done so with aplomb. So a lot of strategy coming into play as actually Philippe Lebert is under pressure as well. Jordi Lopez Jr. starting to get a little bit aggressive behind him, but we'll keep an eye to see if Johnny Guindy dives down onto the lane as we expect he probably may do this time by. So Ade Copa's got to be pretty careful about it, and no, he stays out, so he wants some time to lead the event and dictate the pace here, Will.
He does indeed. Lopez Jr., Turan, they are scrapping. And actually, one of the things I was about to talk about has changed because Andrew Picoria has come down on towards pit road. Greg Zeet on the lane this time by number 74 car. Now, this one is going to be important, of course, because this will give us our first indication of where Lockwood is going to benefit from coming in early. So we'll keep an eye out on that one in a moment. Lebert versus Lopez Jr., that one's going on. Turan is right behind. Johnny Guindy has pulled out 4 attempts per second. There is another theory that could go to play as well, is that as soon as they got above 3 seconds, they realized, okay, we might as well start racing amongst ourselves, because that is, you can't lose really 3 seconds a lap fighting each other unless you're literally going to be bumping wheels the entire way around. But I'm going to have a look now at Brian Lockwood in towards turn number 1. Greg Zeet did a pit stop of 10.1 seconds, and that is the reason why he's still ahead, but only by 0.6 of a second. So under normal circumstances, Jake, Lockwood would be ahead.
He would, and then Greg Seats would be fighting out with Brian Dewell, who's also come down in and made his stop. So Lockwood right in the middle of it, so it's all down now in terms of the strategy play to Adrian Jimenez, who is yet to dive down onto the lane. Lebert, though, decides to go down and make his first pit stop, and the only pit stop, hopefully, of his day. Lebert, at this current stage in the event, Will, is tied for the highest instance so far on 8, and the man he's tied with, of course, was his title rival from last year, Brian Lockwood.
Yeah, indeed so. And of course, Lockwood had that incident at the start of this event. Had the incident. He was there amongst the drivers at the start of this event. So Philippe Lebert going to do his pit stop now. Let's have a look. This will give us a comparable 10.6. And that's in between Lockwood and Greg Zeet as he's going to pull out and away. We are going to be at halfway distance this time by in the 2K World Cup presented by DES Simulation. That pit window is still going to be open for about another 4 to 5 laps. Ade Copa Lopez, let's have a look back on board of him. He's been maintaining station over Johnny Guindy the last couple of laps ever since Guindy passed him in towards turn number 2. I wouldn't be surprised if one of these 2 drivers will come in towards pit road. Guindy will come in towards pit road this time by. So Ade Copa Lopez will take the lead of the motor race once again as Johnny Guindy will come on towards the lane.
And Johnny Guindy needs a clean stop, and not only a clean stop, some fresh air coming out of pit road would be very, very helpful as well, especially when it's about 2/3 of a lap that you see a pit stop taking, as he will search for his box. It will be the penultimate box on the lane, so he won't be encroached on by the wall just in front of him, that small white wall that you often see on pit roads here in iRacing. The fact that there is those troubles, so he'll go up on the jacks, he'll go down and get the fuel that he needs, and before long he will be off and away. Lebert coming down the front stretch as things stands. Out and away goes Johnny Guindy, but crucially enough though, he is in the middle of John Morgan and Hans Hoyer. Tag Hoyer is not a statement of what you should do to Hans Hoyer, but it is get past me quickly.
Oh, apologies for that, ladies and gentlemen. Turan on pit road then, as we had a little bit of impromptu Race.TV fan immersion, but Turan on towards pit road. And one of the things I was just thinking about, Jake, is just how narrow that pit road entry is. It literally is one car length, car width even, plus about 10 mil on either side.
Well, you want to thread the needle, you've got to do it here at Oran Park if you want to come down onto pit road, and so precision sometimes is the easier option to go for at the moment as Tuan Tran comes off of pit road. Leibert is going to breeze on by Will Precarious. It's a very wide exit there from Tuan Tran. He will stay ahead of Andrew Precarious, so no real differences it has seen today, overcut versus undercut, but we are still waiting for Ade Koba to go and make a magical pit stop. And on lap 17, will he decide to stay out? No, he's angling himself. No, he's going to decide that he does want to stay out. Now, drivers have to be very careful about that pit entry as well, because if they're being too aggressive with that, they may ever so slightly have to be considering other drivers behind. We haven't seen anyone really have too much issue so far with that, because of course this is the 2K World Cup. These are the best skip Barber drivers in the world. But they do have to be very, very cautious about how they enter pit road and when they enter pit road as well.
Yeah, Ronan Griffin is one of our closest battles right now, with John Morgan just ahead of him, and the gap between those two drivers, well, it's 7/10 of a second. Neither of these two, though, have come on towards pit road. Ronan Griffin is going to come on towards pit road. Hans Hoyer is going to come on towards pit road as well. Griffin actually has a much better entry compared to Hoyer. Gains about, I would say, 4/10 of a second over him as they make that journey onto the lane itself. But we still pay our attention over to the driver of the 301 car, and Ade Copa Lopez. Let's get that speedometer up for you again. Let's put that graphic away for a moment, and let's try and tempt him on towards pit road. 65 miles an hour for the apex of the final corner, and this time he will stay out again. So Ade Copa Lopez doing the longest strategy I think you could possibly do here, but Tipton, Lopez Jr., Jimenez, Valles, Kabanga and Masida also, at the time of me saying that, had not come on towards pit road either. So a lot of drivers staying into the last third of this motor race before coming on towards pit road.
Oh, Scott Valesin and Christian Kabanga was pushing it onto the lane. He really had to check up, and he was down to 42 kilometers an hour, trying to slow down, fool the timing, fool the speedometer that he's got himself over under 50 kilometers an hour. So he's got to be careful about that. Enzo Cantor comes down onto pit road 2. So a lot of drivers making stops, a lot of drivers needing to make those stops. I also have been keeping an eye on Brian Lockwood and Greg Seats, who have been together. They both got past Javi Rose, who comes down to pit road, but they have both dropped Brian Duell.
Yeah, as we are on board with Brian Lockwood then, heading in towards turn number 1, lap number 19 of 30 here on the iRacing Esports Network. This is the 2K World Cup presented by DES Simulations. Let's try one more time. This time he will come on towards pit road. It's Ade Copa Lopez, slowing it down to 30 miles an hour, as we alluded to earlier. The slowest pit lane, one of the slowest pit lanes on iRacing, and you can see why, because it's so narrow coming on towards pit road. It's also narrow itself in terms of the pit lane. On towards pit road then for Ade Copa Lopez. We've got to ask the question, where is Gindi? Where are the other drivers? Well, it looks like a good entry for Ade Copa Lopez, but he has got the first pit stall. He will lose himself about a 10th of a second, just actually having to turn that car to the left so aggressively to get out of his pit stall. But 12.1 seconds for Lopez. That is slower than Gindi. Gindi will retake the race lead. He's gone and he's away. But there are a lot of drivers, I said, Jake, who's done 11 or sub 11 second pit stops. I still think they might need to save a tiny bit of gas.
I think they'll be okay, but Ade Koba was so long on the lane, and you can't say, Will, that 20-odd drivers can be wrong with 11 or 10-second laps, pit stop times. You look at Ade Koba, 12 seconds. I just have a feeling he's miscalculated his fuel number. Vodafone giants on the wall have not got that right, and Ade Koba all of a sudden now has work to do to catch Gindi. Johnny Gindi, who has been patiently waiting and saving in the early stages. Remember, Ade Koba has only had 3 laps to really try and save anything compared to Gindi, who saved for a good 12 laps before he came down onto the lane. Adekoba is in trouble right now and needs to drive the laps of his life if he is to catch Gindi again.
Brian Lockwood, we're back on board of him versus Greg Zeitz as they work towards the final couple of corners once again. There is Lockwood, number one machine. Going to take it now to the right. And again, he's just been patiently waiting. He did an 11.2 second pit stop. Greg Zeitz did 10.1. The fastest we've had is 9.8 for Andrew Pecorio. You certainly have to put Pecorio and Zeitz into the maybe they could have taken a little bit more, as John Morgan is now on towards pit road. He's the driver that's gone the longest of anyone today, as he will bring that car on towards pit road, that number 177 machine. Out front, it is still Gindi leading the way. The gap between himself and Adekoba Lopez is 2.6 seconds. And what we will be able to do the next time they come past the start-finish line is get some form of a true comparison about what these two drivers' pace is. The gap, 2.6, but the thing is about this track, because it is so short, it is very hard sometimes to make up big chunks of time compared to tracks like a Watkins Glen, a Circuit of the Americas, or a Circuit Spa-Francorchamps. Gindi, however, looking as though he's going to be aggressive. He's pulled out a tenth of a second on the run towards the start-finish line. And as they come past now, let's get a look at the lap times as they will come through. It will be a 1 minute 14.399 for Johnny Gindi. Copa Lopez was faster overall by 600ths of a second, Jake, but that's not enough.
It's not enough at all. He needs to be probably about 2-3 tenths of a second quicker every single lap, and he simply put isn't finding it with just 1/10 of a second. Keep an eye also on Adrian Jimenez, because in terms of his pit stops, he's been jumped by both Zeitz and Lockwood. Lockwood, who has got through on Greg Zeitz, but runs wide at turn number 2, allowing the green-wheeled, green-nosed TT racing car of Zeitz to think about trying to make a move into turn 3, but certainly not close enough to make anything decisive. Lockwood, I think, has reached the pinnacle of where he can get, Will. He's got 7 seconds to Andrew Pecorio, but as we know, Pecorio needs to save fuel. Good news for Pecorio, though. He's got Tuan Tran, who he can sit behind and usurp the fuel out of.
Yeah, and that is Andrew Pecorio right now in the number 53 Club New York car as they'll work towards the end of the lap. Tuan is just ahead by about half a second on the racetrack. Now that pit stops are complete, let's have a look through your top 8 in this event so far. And it is Johnny Gindi leading away by 2.8 seconds. That last time by, he pulled out 2 tenths over Adekoba Lopez. Justin Tipton is in 3rd place. 4th place is Felipe Leber. Still within 10 seconds of your race leader, but both Tipton and Leber are 5 back from where they really need to be. Tran in 5th place. Andrew Pecorio in 6th. Brian Lockwood 7th, and Greg Zeitz in 8th. 9th place is Adrian Jimenez, and then 10th is Brian Dewell. Your retirees today, you've only got one true retiree, that is Martin Cruz. You've got 2 other retirees, people who did not start the race. They are Richard Avery and Carl Dronke. In terms of the movers and shakers in this event today, now we've had our pit stops, we can get a better picture, Jake, of who's won and who's lost. Well, Lockwood, he's worked the strategy to his advantage, as well as JB Maceda. Maceda's up 9 places, Lockwood up 12.
And that's very, very crucial for them, and especially for Lockwood's championship challenge. Jordi Lopez Jr., though, he's dropped down 7 positions, and he is quite an interesting gap, Will, away from Felipe Leber in terms of time. That gap is 15 seconds on circuit, and that indicates to me that he's had to stop and hold for an extra 15 seconds on track.
He had a 25.4 second pit stop, so he was too fast coming on towards pit road. There's confirmation now on your screen, ladies and gentlemen, as 25.4 seconds. Even if you take tyres, you're not going to have a stop that long. So, indeed, a penalty of some variety for Jordi Lopez Jr., bringing him down outside of your top 10. He has got Scott Valles ahead of him, just 1 second ahead, and he is catching him at a rate of a couple of tenths per second a lap. But, Jake, he's unlikely now to get inside the top 10.
He is unlikely unless this group in front, Lockwood, Zeitz and Jimenez, all start battling. Brian Duell trying to get in on the action as well. If they start scrapping, and Greg Seats is now starting to look racier and racier as this late race happens. We're looking into the end of 5/6 worth of racing in the next 2 laps. You know that there is going to be opportunities to make moves, and talking about moves, Philippe Laibert needs to get a move and limit the damage that Ade Koba's doing. Mr. 2K World Cup wants to get past his teammate ASAP.
Here is a look on board then with the driver of Philippe Laibert. Justin Tipton's just ahead as they come down into 1 now. Laibert looking as though he is going to think about the inside, but not into 1. Not into 2 either. He can't do so. He kind of looked as though he was thinking about the inside, Jake. But actually, you don't necessarily want to be on the inside into 1. You actually prefer to be on the outside into 1 to then get the kind of cutback on the inside into 2.
You almost got to dupe them. It's the sort of the Schumacher move. You move right to try and force them to go right, and then you dummy them down into the left, and you try and make that move stick. That's the sort of thing that you're looking at from drivers. They've got to be wily here at Oran Park. This is not going to be a track where you just do the basics and you make all the moves happen. You have to use a bit of tactical ingenuity, as I like to put it, to try and make your way past opponents. And I think that a lot of drivers are struggling with that, but other drivers like Brian Lockwood have used that to their advantage. Drivers like JB Masida, who's leading a train at the moment, they've used that tactical ingenuity, Will, to their advantage to gain the positions that makes Oran Park work for them.
Yeah. As we're having a look at Johnny Gindi, he's got that gap up to 3 1/3 seconds right now over Adecopa Lopez. In fact, let's ride a lap on board of him, give you a little bit of Racewhat TV fan immersion here from Oran Park. Less than 4 laps to go here at Oran Park in the 2K World Cup, presented by DES Simulations. Worth noting, Jake, Philippe Laibert has got himself past Justin Tipton.
He has, and that's the 3rd position. I didn't think there'd be too much of a challenge from Justin Tipton, with, of course, his teammate Laibert going through. Laibert does not like it when he makes contact with teammates. Johnny Gindi used to be a former teammate, not anymore. Why? Because they made contact at Circuit of the Americas about 2, maybe even 3 seasons ago now, as time continues to meld into 1. But at the moment, my attention has been solely put on the Duell Jimenez Seats Lockwood train at the moment, Will, because Lockwood's been defending well, and I think they're starting to gear up to the end. The sort of, when do I make the move? How late do I make the move? And how desperate do I need to get to make that one more move?
Well, yeah, and we will probably start seeing that, not next time by, but the time after that, when we come to 2 laps to go. So, here we are then, as we're looking again at Seats Lockwood. And Yuminiev, Duell, all in that kind of gaggle right now. It can be hard to overtake, and it's going to take a brave man to do so, maybe in towards turn number 1. Behind, you have got JB Masida, Christian Kabanga, Anthony Catt. They are also scrapping at it very close together, as Anthony Catt's the closest of those. Going to go, though, on board with Greg Seeds, because here he comes over Brian Lockwood. Cannot make the move, though, in towards 2.
No, he couldn't, but Lockwood has been running that uber wider entry into 2, and this is opening the door up for Seats to think about sending one down the inside into 3. Postage stamp, not quite licked and sent, but he has been eyeing that up, and Brian Lockwood's got to be wise to that, because he knows the moment that he leaves that door open, Greg Seats is not going to take a second opportunity. He's going to bolt out like a cat who's been left inside for days on end. He knows he's got to make the move, and for the moment at least, Brian Lockwood understands as much. He knows he's got to defend, Will.
You know that you neither lick postage stamps or envelopes anymore.
Oh, that's disappointing.
Yeah. It's just a random thing. Jimenez, Greg Seats right now, as you say, that is our closest battle that we've got going on inside of your top 10. They have got less than 2 laps to go. Johnny Gindy is still your race leader. He took the race lead away just before halfway in this event. Said, I'm bored of sticking behind Copa Lopez. He knew he had enough of the lead in case of 2 fought. Nothing happened. Brian Duell, though, Jimenez, they're going to be side by side in towards turn number 1, in towards turn number 2. And this is where the battles start now. And we've got ourselves Jimenez ahead of Duell as they come in towards 3.
And now Duell looking to angle to the inside. He's not close enough, and they're starting to trip up over each other ever so slightly. If anything happens to them, Jordi Lopez Jr. has been slowly clawing this gap in. He's not close enough right now, but he knows that he doesn't have long to go before they start running over each other. Ade Koba in second position. He's been playing the Prost game today, Will. He's been sitting and playing the patient game. Knew he was beaten after a poor pit stop. Decided he didn't want to go and chase. He'll conserve second position, and he'll live to fight another day. But for the moment, white flag comes out for Evolution Racing Team's Johnny Gindy at their home race for Evolution Racing Team. They look like they're going to pick up a big win.
Yeah, we're going to stick it for the time being with this battle because, of course, they still got one more chance at turn number 1 through 3. So let's have a look then from up above as I work towards turn number 1. Is anyone thinking about making a move? It looks like Jimenez is thinking of doing so again over Greg Seats, and this is just allowing Lockwood the freedom to move ahead because Seats had to kind of play defense there rather than trying to get closer to Lockwood. So that top 4, it looks as though that top 4, that 4-car gag lever, looks like it might be prematurely ended here, and it means that we can go to Johnny Gindy for the moment and have a look at him work for the last couple of corners. We will, however, keep an eye out and see if anything does happen with those 4 towards the end of this one. We have the opportunity, though, to go now to Johnny Gindy. The Evolution Racing Team have now just got one more corner to go, and it is ERT who beat out the Vodafone Giants here at Oran Park. Johnny Gindy is your winner. And it's a big gap, 4 seconds between himself and then waiting for Ade Copa Lopez, who now crosses the start-finish line. Third place will be Felipe Burr. He just holds on from Justin Tipton. Tram, rounding out your top 5. And, well, after all the thoughts about it being entertaining at the end.
Sorry, I think Scott Valles is slowing it right down. Has he blown his engine potentially, Will? Because he is very slow. 70k, struggling to get going. He may be out of fuel.
Well, at least one driver out of fuel then today. 10.7 seconds was his pit stop. But Scott Valles, yeah, we don't see any smoke coming out from the rear of that car, so it looks like it's more likely he has just run out of fuel in that car, and he falls all the way down to P number 18. But I was trying to say there, Jay, because we had all these potentials for great battles in the mid-pack. They didn't really come to fruition at the end.
No, they didn't, and I don't think that the circuit lends itself to that style of battling. I think that open wheel vehicles struggle to go too wide because they have to deal with all the downforce and things like that. I think that Oran Park is a better circuit, maybe more suited to the touring car style, where you have to really, you know, almost push to pass in the chrome horn sense, Will. I don't think it was as much of a suitable track really for the Skip Barber. It works well for it, but I think that for overtaking it and the marvel and spectacle of it, Oran Park isn't the best circuit in the world to see overtaking at.
No, but what we have had is an interesting race, one that's had a little bit of strategy, some what's I going to say? Assertive passing and drivers working themselves up through the field. Let's recap all of that then with your final race results. Johnny Gindi, about halfway through the race, said he was going to overtake Ade Copa Lopez, and we thought he was just coming on towards pit road the next lap. Well, in fact, he decided to dance off into the Australian sunset, and he wins by 4.1 over Ade Copa Lopez and Vodafone Giant. Third place will go to TT Racing's Philippe Laber, with teammates Justin Tipton in fourth, and Turan rounding out your top five. You then got Andrew Mercurio in sixth place, Andrew Mercurio in sixth place, Brian Lockwood in seventh, Greg Zeet in eighth, Adrian Jimenez in ninth, and then Brian Dewell rounding out your top 10. On to page 2, Jordi Lopez Jr. Not necessarily the day he would have wanted. P number 11. JB Masida in 12th place. Christian Kabanga had himself an incident early, comes home P number 13. Anthony Catt in 14th position. Enzo Cantor running out your top 15 as we see the remainder of the results coming up on your screen right about now. And we have already got the chance to talk to your race winner. That is the driver of Johnny Gindi. Congratulations with what ended up being a pretty dominant victory.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, after the pit stop, coming out of the pits, I didn't think it would be that dominant because I took about two laps too much fuel, about 1.8 laps too much fuel. Even though I was saving quite a bit and making a point of saving quite a bit behind Dai. And then the plan was to pass him, so I'd be in front of him going into the pits and also pit a little bit early because I knew I had a little bit of a pace advantage over him, so I could pull away maybe 2/10 a lap, 1-2/10 a lap. But in the end, I don't know what happened with it. Maybe he took too much fuel, caught some traffic, but in the end, apart from that little mistake, everything went pretty smoothly. And of course, there was a bit of a mistake in the qualifying because I could have gotten maybe a 10th quicker still. But it doesn't really matter. It gave me the chance to save fuel anyway, so in the end, it might have been a blessing.
How do you like these kind of 1 hour to prepare races? Anything can happen, any sort of track. I mean, you've raced at pretty much every track there can be at iRacing. Having had years of experience, is that an advantage to you?
Yeah, for sure it's an advantage. I mean, to be fair, I hadn't driven this track in over a year. But I think the last time I drove here was in a 2K race we had here as well. But for example, I had never driven this modal layout. So it was completely new to me, just that tiny bit of road, but it doesn't really matter, you get used to it. Even new tracks, you can get fairly quick, having not driven them before. For example, Brian Lockwood was saying he had never driven this track, and he was still not that far off the pace, learning the track. So I always really like the random races, because I'm usually pretty quick at getting up to speed. So they sort of favor me a little bit.
Well, a couple of weeks' time, of course, we'll be back to do it all over again, except not actually. It will be on the 23rd of September. It will be a double header coming up. Actually, we've got something before that. Let's stop thinking about it. No, it isn't. It is a double header on the 23rd of September. Motegi East and then the Oval. Thoughts?
I'm really excited for Motegi East. I'm not excited for the Oval.
I think you're going to have people go either way on that one.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of drivers here, like Philippe, Brian Dewell, that are pretty good in both oval and road. So yeah, they've got a bit of an edge there, but still, I'll do the best I can in the oval, and then hope to win the road race. Evolution
Racing Team, who gets it done for you?
Well, first of all, I want to congratulate Arjen. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to make it. But the reason for that is that he is now a dad, so congratulations to Arjen. His son's name's Tobias, so congrats, Arjen. And just don't let him, suck your time away that much, and do show up here every now and then. But yeah, apart from that, everyone in Evolution Racing Team, our sponsors, JRT, Motum, and Logitech Gaming.
Thank you very much. Jake, final thoughts.
Difficult race for a lot of drivers. I think Adekoba played the strategy game in terms of the championship over the race victory here today, but one which I think a lot of drivers will be looking to try and put behind them who didn't get the best result. Of course, a double header means that 2 times the points are on offer. Motegi East is going to be interesting. Motegi Oval is going to be even more interesting. You say, Will, that some drivers go one way or the other? I'll tell you something right now. I go both ways.
Well then, ladies and gentlemen, that is all we got time for from the 2K World Cup presented by DES Simulation. Before we go, quick couple of people to give a shout out to. They are Andreas1 and One Design for our graphical overlay design, and also to Simon Grossman at engineering.com for development, Nick Thiston for Racebot TV, live timing and scoring. We say goodbye from Oran Park, and we'll see you in a few weeks' time at Motegi. Good night from the 2K World Cup.